recording this on Veterans Day. Dr. Kang is a veteran, so happy Veterans Day to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the sentiment and appreciate, obviously, the service for all of our members who have served honorably in the armed forces.
And it would seem that you're working currently right now at Madigan Army Medical Center. We were talking just before we started recording. You're working there as a civilian. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your...
Thank you. Part of it was that was my last active duty assignment. And afterwards, obviously, I fell in love with both the people as well as the mission. And when my service obligation was over, because of my love of the facilities, the people, as well as the residency program, they asked me to stay on as a civilian. And I've had the privilege of staying on there ever since.
All right. I remember seeing you this past summer in Seattle. We actually were able to make it to a Mariners game. And sorry about your Mariners. They lost to the Astros, the world champion Houston Astros. But what do you think are the Mariners' chances in 2023?
I think it's going to be a touch and go. And the reason why is because they obviously showed a lot of potential. They're a young team, but as offseason can provide a lot of challenges in terms of contracts, players, chemistry. And then I also want to thank you, because if it wasn't for your presence there and us winning those games, we wouldn't have even made the playoffs. So thank you very much.
Yeah, apparently I was the good luck charm for Seattle this year.
You were.
All right, let's get down to ACEP business now. When you were on the board, you were liaison to the emergency physician assistant, nurse practitioner utilization, and emergency medicine workforce task forces. How are you going to ensure that ACEP is making sure that emergency physicians retain their role as leaders in emergency departments around the country?
I think it's to bring our primary mission, and the reason for our organization is to represent emergency physicians. And I want to thank Dr. Schmitz for her leadership over the past year, and it continues through this year to make sure that we never lose sight of that. Having said that, one of the things that I think that has come out well from that is we have had interactions and communications with our nurse practitioner and PA colleagues. We've had discussions with employers as well as residency programs about where we think we are right now and where we need to go next. And one of the things that has come out of it is to make sure and continue to emphasize that emergency physicians are the leaders of the emergency care team. And I don't think anyone disputes that. Where we start to get into a little trouble is different environments, different settings, and then different expectations from all of the professions. And how can we make sure that we all have the same mission? And if we remember that commonality, I believe that in time, we can continue to make sure that we continue to be the leaders. And as a result, hopefully ensure better quality of care for our patients and better career satisfaction for our members.
Well, as candidate for president a few years ago, we asked about the emergency physician workforce, and your candidate statement can be found online. And the title of that article is 2021 ACEP Elections Preview, Meet the President and Board Candidates. So let's jump into a little of those things. I wanted to bring up some quotes that you mentioned back then and see how you plan on achieving that now that you're in the hot seat as president. So how do you plan to ensure that business interests do not supersede patient care and that the needs of patients and the workforce take priority?
I think you've seen that manifested both as what most of the candidates have said over the past several years, but also in the messaging that we've seen from the college. And that is, with recent events this past summer, the patient-physician relationship, our relationship with our patients at the bedside always comes foremost. And so one of the things that we've heard from many members is concerns that somewhere along the way, business interests, whether it's on the individual, on the local, or on the macro level, may impede that relationship or interfere with it. That must continue to be sacrosanct. Second of all is we need to have discussions when and where we believe that there is a direct impact on our ability to establish rapport, evaluate, treat, and disposition our patients at the bedside. And so it does migrate into many other issues, whether it's actual clinical decisions, business decisions, and as you probably heard, over time, staffing decisions. As long as we, again, remember what our primary mission is as an organization and remember that our patient-physician relationship and what we do and what we need to continue to lead to do, I think we'll continue to be able to at least make sure that we're aware of it and mitigate those effects.
And you had mentioned earlier challenging the monopolization of healthcare services. How do you plan on accomplishing that?
I think there are two reasons that it becomes a concern. One of them is we have seen consolidation in every aspect of healthcare as economies of scale, as people try to find better ways and sometimes cheaper ways of doing things. And we've seen that not just with employers, but also with healthcare systems, and even sometimes some of our groups. And so first and foremost is to recognize those direct as well as potentially insidious effects of that. The second one is the actual vertical integration, a lot of healthcare organizations, and in particular the insurers. And although I'm still learning about it and talking with some of our experts, Some of our insurers now actually serve as their own complete healthcare networks. And how does that impact both our patient care, but also our practices and our careers over time? And so I want to make sure that we continue to take a look at both of those, because I think that is actually the one that challenges right now our current well-being of our both community as well as our career satisfaction.
Let's look a little bit towards the future. How do you think emergency medicine will transform itself over the next 5 to 10 years?
I wish I could give you a good answer, except I'm optimistic. As we've all known over the last 3 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has had profound influences, probably accelerated and revealed a lot of cracks in the healthcare system. And whether there will be fundamental changes demanded by the public, by legislators, or by the healthcare community, moving forward will be an interesting time. But if we all identify our commonality on what we need to do best and what we believe and how we can better become the coordinators of all acute unscheduled care, and then have better relationships with the coordinators of inpatient care, our hospice, I think that we can go ahead and say that we are going to be on the right trajectory for a better future for our specialty. Second of all is to promote what we do best, and then to find new innovative ways of how we can deliver that care, whether it's telehealth, whether it's improved team dynamics, whether it's different employment models. I think that our members are always innovative, always seeking how they can deliver their care and exercise their skill sets better. And I'm optimistic that when we find those opportunities and support them, in the end, the cream will rise to the top.
Right, you just mentioned team dynamics. What do you think is the best way that we can incorporate and also train advanced practice providers to work alongside emergency physicians in the emergency department?
I think first and foremost, we need to recognize and make sure that everybody agrees that we are the leaders. And with leadership comes responsibility. And that is, we can just say they're part of the team. How can we help them improve both their skill sets, but also make sure that they complement the overall team mission? And so part of it is their education and training, as you've heard over the last several years. Many programs do have some curriculums that exposes them and educates them and affords them the opportunity to have patient care and learn how to deliver patient care better in the emergency environment. But we also know that there are a lot of training programs that unfortunately maybe don't even always have sufficient even patient care, much less in the emergency care setting. So how can we make sure that those professions realize that? Because if they're going to function in the emergency department, like almost every other profession there, including our nursing colleagues, we are a specialty. And there is a special skill set that requires education, training, and onboarding to make sure that we can all deliver that care in that setting. Second of all is to be respectful of each other. We are going to have disagreements, but as long as we recognize the team dynamic, who's the leader, but also respect each of the professions, and that we all have the same mission, I believe that in the end, most of our differences actually will fade away. We'll still have some, but that's where the honest dialogue, honest communication, and respecting each other to understand where and when we agree and where we disagree.
Right. One of the most important things for you I've learned has been mental health and how that plays out in the emergency department. Last year, we did a special issue in May during Mental Health Month, focusing on some of those issues as they pertain to emergency physicians. But what do you want ACEP members to know about mental health?
I think comes down to both our patients and ourselves. And that's why I'd like to advocate and prioritize mental health over this next year or maybe even 2 years. And that is, we know every day when you show up at work, mental health of our patients is a critical issue, not only in how do we, the volumes that we see, but sometimes the severity, whether it's violence, whether it's despondency, whether it's delirium. And then the second thing is we're all impacted by the boarding of mental health patients when the entire system doesn't have the inpatient, outpatient resources to help us. I've heard stories in the Southeast where we have patients who are boarding the ED for over 180 days. And now, just yesterday, I learned in the Midwest, there's a patient that's over 230 days. How is that right for the patient? How is that right for their families? And how is that right for the ED? Which then transitions to what do we do for ourselves? And part of it is reducing the stigma, recognizing the burden, the privilege that we've had over the last several years, continuing to work and show up day to day throughout the pandemic. And now we're being asked to do even more with less, not only resources, but respect. And so with the Lorna Breen Act, with recognition that we are sometimes heroes, but we're also human, how can we make sure that our members know that they're heard, we understand their problems, and how we can go ahead and continue to sustain the respect they have both themselves as well as the public. And so you've seen recent campaigns with ED violence, and now we're going to press forward with boarding, and then we're also going to then press forward on mental health And again, I want to reinforce, it's not just patients, it's also for ourselves and how we can have the resources and the ability to sometimes take a step away, sometimes be able to compartmentalize, and then sometimes have the resources to make sure that we can continue to deliver the care and have the careers that we wish to have.
Thank you. And I want to ask you about how you feel right now. Specifically, what does it mean to you to be the first Asian American to lead as ACEP president?
Thank you. I feel an incredible privilege not only to be president, because honestly, many years ago, if you had said that I would somewhere be in the national leadership of the college, was the farthest from my mind. All I wanted to do at that time was find out a little bit more and how I could contribute to make things better, not only for my patients, but my colleagues. And over time, that scope of not just my work colleagues and my own ED expanded. As an Asian American, I do realize that many do look towards me as an example. And that also adds to the privilege of being that, but also the responsibility to make sure that I continue to make sure that not only am I recognized that, but also make sure that I also represent all of our colleagues.
All right. Hope to catch up with you in Philadelphia in 2023. Here you're a foodie. Are you going to be going to Geno's or Pat's for your cheesesteak there? And are you a fan of Cheese Whiz or not?
So 3 things. 1, Pat's Geno's. I've heard the controversy. I know that there are their loyalists. Believe it or not, Denick's pork sandwich is I think, comparable. I know that's going to cause a lot of controversy in itself. Second of all, for Cheese Whiz, right time, the right setting, it does fill a need and it can be delicious. And then third, in terms of being a foodie, I just like to find people who create things and then try to enjoy and see what vision they have. And most times the experience is not only with the food, but also meeting them in person. That's the fun experience.
Do you mind leaving viewers with an interesting tale of one of your food experiences?
Ooh, so I think there is one that occurred that I think just highlights how one person can make a difference. I was having dinner in a city that I normally go to, but I was in a different part of town. I heard about a restaurant that was within several blocks. I went there and it was crowded. The hostess there at the front desk said, "Nope, we'll get you a seat as soon as we can at the bar." And she literally watched the bar like a hawk. And within 4 or 5 minutes, someone got up. She pointed to the bartender. I sat down. And afterwards, he came right up, said, "Welcome. Let me clear this out of the way. I really appreciate you being here. What are you interested in?" I said, "I've visited here several times. I've never been here before. I would just like a good meal and to enjoy the experience, see what you have." He says, "Well, how long are you in town?" I said, 2 or 3 days. And he said, "Great, here's the menu. What would you like to drink?" We got through that. And then for the menu, he said, "What would you like for your entree?" And I ordered one. And he says, "You know what? We have a special tonight. And trust me, I think you'll like this." So I said, "Great, fine." Brought it. Absolutely wonderful meal. At the end, when we're closing the bill, he said, "I hope you continue to have a good stay. I hope that we made a good impression. And here's a little something for you to take away." And it was the original dish that I had ordered. And he gave that to me for me to take away from the restaurant. And that just shows powers of observation, hospitality, welcoming, and the ability to say, what is my job? And that is to take care of people. And that is reflected also, I think, in the way most of our members, I hope, continue to be, even despite these dark times.
I think that's a very good lesson. And thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Kang, on ACEP Now. Good luck this year. We'll hope to catch up with you in a few months after you've been in office for a little while and see how things are going as ACEP president.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk, and I look forward to talking to you again, and we'll see how the off season for baseball goes.
Great job.